Well, good morning, Bush family. We are blessed to be back once again into the house of God. God has been good to us, and we thank Him for His goodness. And we are so blessed to be among the living, for there are so many in this pandemic who was here with us last Sunday that are not here today. And so we are blessed. And I want to remind you, when you wake up on Sunday morning and put your feet on the floor, don't forget to say thank you. Thank you. Bless you. All right. As we go to our lesson today, our lesson is found in James chapter 1, verses 1 through 11. James chapter 1, verses 1 through 11. Before we get started into our lesson, let me give you a little history or background on which James that we are talking about. Now, this James is not the son of Zebedee. This is not the brother of Peter and John. This James that are in our lesson today, as some puts it, is the brother of Jesus. Some say the half-brother of Jesus. And some just say the brother of Jesus. And you can read that in Galatians chapter 1 and verse 19, and Mark 6:3, Matthew 13 and 55. Now, this James that we are talking about, the brother of Jesus, he were slow to accept Jesus as Lord. He didn't accept him at the beginning of his ministry. This James that we are talking about today, he accepted Christ after the resurrection. So we don't know, the Bible does not tell us why the delay. But what we do know is that it's better late than never. So this James, he accepted Christ and became a follower of Christ. Not in the beginning, but somewhat towards the end of his message. James, at that time, accepted Jesus as Lord. And this James, in our lesson today, became a devout Christian. And once James took on Christ, you can read it for yourself, he never looked back. He went forward. He went forward. And now, in the beginning of our lesson, James now is writing to the Christians that have been scattered throughout. There was a great persecution of the church during this time. And so James now is writing to those who have been scattered abroad. And, James says this, brethren, count it all joy when you fall into divers temptations. Count it all joy when you fall into divers temptation. Now we was told when I was a kid growing up to avoid temptation. To run away from temptation. And you remember Joseph in Egypt when Potiphar's wife came after him, and he ripped his clothes trying to get away from temptation. But here it is. There is something that is unique about this. And here it is, James, who is a servant of Christ. He said, count it all joy when you fall into divers temptation. And so I had to go a step farther. I wanted to know now why would he say that? And on the other hand, we've been told to avoid temptation. So I was searching the scripture, and there's a word in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 13. And that says, there has no temptation taken you but such as common to man. Watch this now. But God had made a way to escape. So James says, you can rejoice in temptation, knowing that God had already made an escape for you. And that's not all that is in this text here. So, and knowing this, that the trials of your faith worketh patience. But now, did you not know that patience brings tribulation? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We as Christians had better be careful when we ask God for patience. Right. Why? Because patience brings tribulation. Yes, and what we are really saying, Lord, teach me how to wait. And waiting, sometimes you have to suffer in waiting. So this is what James here is saying. Count it all joy when you fall into divers temptation. Knowing this, that God had made a way for an escape. So therefore, we can rejoice. But then he goes on to say, but let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect, entire, wanting nothing. Wanting nothing. But if you wait on God, He will deliver. If you wait on God, just be patient. Everything will come out all right. But this is what James wants us to know. He said, now, there might be some suffering in waiting. So James said, I want you to know that. There's going to be some suffering in waiting. And then he goes on to say, and in order to help you to wait on God, Then he said, if you need wisdom, then if you need wisdom, ask God. If you need something to help you as you wait, he said, ask God, and he'll give it to you. He said, if any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who giveth to all men liberally and unbridled not, and it shall be given him. But here's the thing. You have to ask. You have to ask. And wisdom is not always what we think that it ought to be. When we ask God for wisdom, we don't know what shape or what form or how God's going to send it. We have to wait on it. And I remember his mother said at the marriage feast, remember? And Mary said, the mother of Jesus said, whatever he says, do it. And that's what we have to do in waiting on God and asking for wisdom, because we don't know how it's going to come, or what form, or what shape, or what we have to go through. Let me give you this. Our lesson is pretty simple. Let me give you this. Remember when Israel was in Babylon? Remember, after they came out of Egypt and they went to Babylon, and they spent 70 years in Babylon. So while they were in Babylon, they made God a whole bunch of promises. And they said, Lord, if you bring us out of here, we'll serve you. And then they put a cliche on it. If we don't serve you, they said, then let our tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. That's the promise that they made while they was in Babylon. So when the time came for them to go home, and when they got back home, they forgot about the promise that they made in Babylon. So God, watch this now. I'm talking about wisdom now. So God called Hosea. So he called Hosea. He said, Hosea, I have a message that I want you to take to my people Israel. Listen, now I said a minute ago, we don't know what we're going to have to go through. We don't know how God is going to send us that wisdom that we need. But look what he done to Hosea. He said, Hosea, I'm going to send you to my people Israel. But before you go, before I send you, Hosea was a young man, 17, 18 years old. You know what God told him? He said, I want you to go down to the nightclub. I want you to go down to the nightclub and I want you to marry a prostitute. Y'all read it. I want you to marry a prostitute. And mind you now, she already had one son. And Hosea never changed his word, never said a word about it. He went and he married the prostitute, brought her home. Watch me now. I want to show you wisdom at work. Wisdom at work. So Hosea married the prostitute, brought her home. had a baby, and looked around, the woman was gone. She took off, went back to the club. Know what God say? Go get her. Go get her. Bring her back. He went and got her and brought her back and was there for a while. Know what happened next time? She left again. God said, go get her. Bring her back. The third time. They came home, looked around, she was gone again. God says, go get her. But this time, when Jose found her, she was on the auction block. She was about to be auctioned off. Watch me now. I'm trying to show you wisdom at work. Elder, this time, Jose had to pay a price. This time, Jose had to pay a price for her. And what is the wisdom in this? And sometimes wisdom is not always for somebody else. It's for you. So Jose went down, paid the price, brought her back home. God said, now, this is the reason why I done this. I'm going to send you to Israel, my people. And they're going to do you just like they done me. They're going to turn their back on you. And they're going to walk away from you. But God said, I paid the price. I gave my blood on Calvary. In order to buy you. And to buy me. You see the wisdom? Wisdom at work. So Hosea went to Israel, told them, took the message of God, and he was able to deliver. The Bible said, and he was able to stand. He couldn't be tripped up. He said, no, but God told me to tell you. You didn't keep your promise while you was in Babylon. But we thank God that he is long suffering. We thank God that he didn't just cut us off when we walked away from him. He told Hosea, go get her. Bring her back. Isn't that what God done for us? Many times. I walked away from God. I didn't always obey what God says. And I walked away. But God, he said, I paid a price for you. And he bought us back. Wisdom. Maybe Hosea didn't see it. Hosea was a young man. But sometimes God has to teach us a lesson. And we don't always want what God has to offer. Because we have to suffer some. So here in our lesson today, wisdom. My book says wisdom and trials. Wisdom and trials. There's going to be some suffering in this life. There are going to be many things that we're going to have to go through. Not because God enjoys us suffering, But sometimes we need to be taught a lesson. So here, the lesson in this text for Hosea, it wasn't for them, but it was for him to learn wisdom. And you know what? Many times, in order to learn, for us to learn wisdom, we're going to have to go through some stuff. We're going to have to go through some stuff. And James said, and then we can learn how to wait on God. And then we can learn how to wait on God. Yes. Wisdom in trials. I said a few minutes ago, then we're going to move on. Wisdom, patient. Be careful when we ask God for patience. Because the Bible tells us that patience brings tribulation. Patient. Lord, teach me how to wait. But there is tribulation in waiting. So James, in this first part of our lesson, he writes to the Christian that has been scattered abroad. I know you're going through some stuff, but wait on God. Be patient. Wait on God, and he will deliver. Yes. And then he goes on to verse 9, and he says, let the brother of low degree rejoice in that he is exalted. Don't be too hasty. Don't think that you're doing so good until you elevate yourself. But when God elevates you, nobody can bring you down. Be careful. And I like the way my other Bible talks about it. He says, my brother, that's not what I want. He said, okay, he said, the rich, okay, he said, a Christian who doesn't amount to much in this world ought to be glad, for he is great in the Lord's sight. To be exalted. If you let the Lord exalt you, he'll lift you up. And nobody can bring you down. But for the rich man, he says, but a rich man shall be glad that his riches means nothing to the Lord. For he will soon be gone like a flower that has lost its beauty and fade away, withered, killed by the scorching summer sun. So is with the rich man that will soon die and leave behind all their busy activities. But if you let God exalt you, you will be exalted. you will be exalted. So James here said, and I said in my book says, so ask for it. Ask for it. Wisdom. You can't get it by osmosis. You can't reach in a hat and pull it out. James said, if you want wisdom, we have to ask God. And the wisdom that he gives, sometimes we might not, just like Hosea, we might not like what we have to go through. But at the end of it, there is joy. There is joy. So he said, ask for it. Jesus said, ask, and it shall be given. Wisdom. I was watching the news the other day, and about this pandemic, the stuff that we are going through now. And there are many doctors that are working on this cure. And this doctor won't let the other doctor know what he has. But for them, it's about money. So who's going to get the bigger check? If I find the cure, you know what I'm saying. If I find the cure, then I'm going to get the big check. But if you find it, I'm going to lose out. But what does God say? God says this, that you're going to go to Gilead and you're not going to find no cure. And if by reason you do find the cure, it won't work. God said, you left me out. You didn't ask me. God said, if you had asked me, I would have given you. He said, whatever you asked for. But you didn't ask. And closing, God told Israel, he said, how often would I have gathered you under my wings, but you wouldn't come? I wanted to, but you wouldn't come. And so God said, and since you won't obey me, God said, I'll just take a step back. Let you go on. You say you can find the cure, go on. Wisdom. Wisdom says, elder, wisdom says that we ought to have sense enough to ask God. But since we know it all, we don't need him. Wisdom. Wisdom. And you're going to need it. There is going to come a time in our lives that we're going to need it. And I'm going to repeat myself. And you ain't going to be able to reach in the hat and pull it out. And God says, the reason why you don't have it is because you didn't ask. Wisdom. James says, count it all joy when we fall into these diverse temptations. And what they are there for, they are there to make you strong. To make us strong. But how long? How long are we going to read His Word, go to church, and yet miss the message? Many of us, we go to church. Many of us leave the same way we came and miss the message. So when God comes back, what did you do? I gave you the message. What did you do with it? What did you do? Our lesson today says, ask for it. When we ask, God will give us what we ask. Not only that, overflowing and running over. That's what God does. And today, He wants us to do it today and not wait. Whatever you need, God's got it. Ask Him for it. May God bless you and may God keep you, is our prayer.